The breaking point. The family portrait. I sat at the dining table, staring at the untouched mashed potatoes on my plate. The clatter of forks and the forced laughter around me felt like background noise to a scene I didn't belong in. My parents, John and Mary, were deep in conversation with my older brother, Michael, who was bragging about his latest promotion at the law firm. Michael was the golden child, tall, successful, and perpetually smug. My younger sister, Sarah, lounged across from me, scrolling her phone, occasionally chiming in with a sarcastic remark that somehow still earned her a fond smile from Mom. And then there was me, Alex, the middle child, the invisible one. At 29, I'd spent years trying to find my place in this family. I'd gone to art school, landed a job as a graphic designer, and built a life I was proud of. But to my parents, it was never enough. Unstable, they called my career. Not prestigious, Dad would say, his voice thick with disappointment. Mom would just sigh and suggest I find something practical, like Michael did. Tonight was no different. As the conversation shifted to Sarah's upcoming wedding, I felt the familiar knot tighten in my stomach. She was marrying a guy our parents had picked out, some accountant named David who checked all their boxes. Stable job, traditional values, boring as hell. Sarah didn't seem to mind, though. She'd always been the rebel who somehow got a free pass. Alex, Mom said suddenly, her voice cutting through my thoughts. When are you going to settle down? You're not getting any younger. I gripped my fork a little tighter. I'm focusing on work right now, Mom. Relationships aren't a priority. Dad snorted, not even looking up from his plate. Work? You mean that little drawing thing you do? When are you going to get a real job? Michael smirked, leaning back in his chair. Yeah, Alex. Maybe it's time to grow up. Law school's still an option. Or accounting. My face burned. I wanted to snap back, to tell them I'd just landed a big freelance contract, that my drawing thing paid my bills and then some. But I knew it wouldn't matter. I love what I do, I said quietly. It's not a hobby. It's my passion. Mom sighed, the sound heavy with judgment. Passion doesn't pay for a house or a family, Alex. You need to think about your future. The rest of dinner blurred into more of the same. Criticism masked as concern, advice I hadn't asked for. By the time I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, I felt like I'd been wrung out and left to dry. Driving back to my apartment, I couldn't shake the question. Would they ever see me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be, the weight of expectations? For the next few months, I kept my distance. Work kept me busy, designing logos for a startup, sketching concepts late into the night. It was my escape, a world where I had control. But my family didn't let me stay away for long. One Tuesday, my phone buzzed with Mom's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but guilt tugged at me. Alex, we need to talk, she said, her tone sharp enough to make my stomach drop. What's up? I asked, bracing myself. Your father and I have been thinking. It's time for you to get married. We've found someone suitable, and we want you to meet them. I froze, the words sinking in like stones. Mom, I'm not ready for that, and I don't want you picking someone for me. This isn't a discussion, she snapped. You're almost 30, Alex. We've sacrificed so much for you, and it's time you showed some gratitude. Gratitude? I laughed, bitter and incredulous. For what? For telling me my life's a disappointment every chance you get? Don't you dare talk to me like that, she said, her voice icy. You'll meet this person, or there'll be consequences. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, my hands shaking. Marriage? They didn't even ask what I wanted. They just assumed they could dictate my life like they always had. Over the next few weeks, the pressure ramped up. Mom sent me a profile of this guy. Mark, 32, works in finance, comes from a good family. Dad called to remind me how much they'd spent on my upbringing, as if I owed them my future. They even set up a dinner I refused to attend, which led to a screaming match over the phone. Michael texted me, "Stop being dramatic, just go along with it." Sarah, who I thought might understand, said, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I felt like I was drowning. Every conversation was a demand, every refusal met with guilt trips or threats. They hinted at cutting me off financially. Not that I relied on them anymore, but the message was clear. Obey or lose us. One night, after Mom left a voicemail saying, "You're breaking our hearts, Alex," I sat on my couch staring at the ceiling. My apartment was quiet, but my mind was a storm. I'd spent years bending to their will, taking business classes I hated in college, dating people they approved of, biting my tongue at every jab, and for what? To be a puppet in their perfect family picture? I couldn't do it anymore. But what did that mean? Cutting them off felt impossible. They were my family. I loved them, even when I hated them. The thought of walking away twisted my gut, but staying felt like signing away my soul. Cracks in the foundation, I needed perspective. So I called Jamie, my best friend since high school. We met at a coffee shop downtown, the kind with mismatched chairs and too loud music. Jamie listened as I spilled everything. The marriage ultimatum, the guilt trips, the way my family made me feel small. They're suffocating me, I said, stirring my latte absently. But they're still my parents. Michael and Sarah, too. I don't know how to just let go. Jamie leaned forward, their brown eyes steady. Alex, you don't have to keep taking this. If they can't respect your choices, maybe they don't deserve you in their lives. I frowned. You mean cut them off? That's so extreme. Is it? Jamie asked. Look at what they're doing. Trying to force you into a marriage, tearing you down because you won't conform. That's not love. That's control. You deserve better. Their words hit hard. I'd always told myself it wasn't that bad. The family's fight. That I could handle it. But Jamie was right. Love shouldn't feel like a cage. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every argument, every time I'd swallowed my anger to keep the peace. There was the Christmas when Dad mocked my portfolio in front of relatives, calling it a phase. The time Mom threw out my art supplies in high school because they cluttered the house. The years of Michael's smug superiority and Sarah's indifference. I'd convinced myself it was normal, that I was the problem for not fitting in, but then I thought about the future. If I gave in now, what next? They'd control my career, my relationships, maybe even my kids someday. I'd wake up at 50, miserable, wondering why I'd let them steal my life. Around 3 a.m., something shifted. I didn't want to be their punching bag anymore. I didn't want to beg for their approval. I wanted out. The realization was terrifying, but it was also a relief, like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally exhaled. The breaking point. I knew I had to face them. Ignoring the problem wouldn't make it go away. I had to say it out loud, make it real. So, that Saturday, I drove to their house, my palms sweaty on the steering wheel. I'd rehearsed my speech a dozen times, but my heart still pounded as I pulled into the driveway. They were all there, Mom and Dad on the couch, Michael sprawled in an armchair, Sarah texting on the floor. The TV blared some reality show, but Dad muted it when I walked in. Alex, Mom said, her voice cautious. We weren't expecting you. I need to talk, I said, standing in the middle of the room. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced myself to keep going. This has to stop. Dad raised an eyebrow. What's this about? I took a deep breath. For years, I've tried to make you happy. I've listened to the lectures, the criticism, the demands. I've tried to be the kid you wanted, but it's never enough. You don't respect me, my job, my life, my choices. And now this marriage thing? It's too much. Mom's face tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm done, I said, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. I can't keep doing this. I love you, but I need to walk away. For me. Dad stood, his face red. Walk away? After everything we've done for you? You ungrateful— Stop, I cut in. I'm not ungrateful. I'm exhausted. You don't see me. You see a project to fix. I deserve better than that. Michael laughed, sharp and mean. You're throwing a tantrum because we want what's best for you? Grow up, Alex. Best for me or best for you? I shot back. You've all made it clear I don't belong here unless I play by your rules. I'm not doing it anymore. Sarah looked up, her eyes wide, but she didn't say anything. Mom's face crumpled, tears welling up. You're abandoning us? Your own family? That's not what this is, I said, softer now. I'm setting boundaries. I hope someday we can figure this out, but right now, I need space. The room exploded. Dad yelled about disrespect. Mom sobbed about betrayal. Michael called me selfish. Sarah just stared, caught in the middle. I felt the guilt clawing at me, but I held firm. I'd said what I needed to. I turned and walked out, their voices echoing behind me. The door clicked shut, and I stood on the porch, breathing hard. It was done. The aftermath, the first few weeks were a mess. Mom called non-stop, leaving voicemails that ranged from pleas to accusations. Dad sent a long email about family duty. Michael texted insults. Sarah stayed silent. I blocked their numbers, but the silence that followed was almost worse. I threw myself into work, sketching until my hands cramped. I started therapy too, something I'd put off for years. My therapist, calm woman named Lisa, helped me untangle the guilt and anger. You didn't abandon them, she said once. You chose yourself. There's a difference. It didn't feel that way at first. I'd wake up panicked, wondering if I'd made a mistake. I missed the chaos sometimes, the noise of family dinners, even the arguments. But then I'd remember the weight lifting off my shoulders that night, and I'd keep going. Slowly, things changed. I reconnected with friends I'd drifted from, people who didn't judge me for being me. I joined an art collective, met a guy named Ethan who loved my weird sketches and late-night rants. My life started to feel like mine. One afternoon, months later, I walked through a park near my apartment. The leaves were turning gold, the air crisp. I thought about that last confrontation, Mom's tears, Dad's fury, the way I'd walked away. It still hurt, but it didn't define me anymore. Cutting them off wasn't the end. It was the start. I didn't know if we'd ever reconcile, but I knew I'd found something better, myself. And as the sun dipped below the trees, I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years.